When most people think of American military might, they picture supercarriers projecting power across the oceans, or sprawling, heavily fortified bases housing thousands of troops. But true global control doesn't rely on what you can see. The United States currently operates between 750 and 800 military base sites, embedded across 80 different foreign countries and territories. The Pentagon has quietly transitioned away from massive strongholds toward a secretive approach known as the lily pad doctrine. These are Spartan, highly covert facilities, operated by skeletal crews, designed specifically to avoid public oversight and local political friction. This chart tracks the financial burden of this clandestine network. Maintaining this unacknowledged global footprint costs American taxpayers an estimated $55 billion every single year. To understand how the military governs this clandestine empire abroad, we have to look back at the domestic testing grounds where this blueprint for absolute secrecy was originally built. The desolate stretches of the American West served as the perfect incubator for extreme classification. The most famous example is Homey Airport, far better known as Area 51. Shielded by anonymous guards and buried motion sensors, this isolated runway was built to test unaccountable Black Ops aviation projects, like the U-2 spy plane. The CIA guarded this airspace so fiercely that when American astronauts aboard Skylab accidentally photographed the base from orbit in 1974, it triggered a massive interagency panic. But Area 51's notoriety actually makes it a highly convenient distraction. Just one state away in Utah sits a facility that poses a much more immediate physical threat, the Dugway Proving Ground. Unlike an aviation testbed, Dugway operates as a massive, opaque blind spot where the United States military secretly experiments with the deadliest biological and chemical weapons on Earth, right on American soil. The Army uses Dugway as its premier biological testing site, and its geographic footprint is immense, covering a stretch of desert larger than the entire state of Rhode Island. Operating with zero external oversight leads to catastrophic errors. In 1968, a botched outdoor test of VX nerve agent drifted off the base, killing over 6,000 sheep in a neighboring valley. These containment failures continue into the modern era. As recently as 2015, the facility was caught mistakenly shipping live, highly contagious anthrax spores to civilian labs across the globe. When military operations bypass public accountability, the loss of human and environmental safety becomes an inevitable cost of doing business. Having perfected this model of unaccountable operation domestically, the Pentagon exported it. They found their ultimate offshore staging ground right in the middle of the Indian Ocean. In 1965, the United States secretly paid the British government $14 million to detach the Chagos archipelago from Mauritius to build a naval logistics facility. There was one major obstacle to this plan: the islands were inhabited. So over the next 8 years, the military systematically forced roughly 2,000 indigenous Chagosians completely out of their ancestral homeland. Entire families were loaded onto cargo ships and dumped into severe poverty in the crowded slums of Mauritius and the Seychelles, permanently barred from returning home. The island of Diego Garcia was cleared to create a total legal void. Because it sits entirely outside standard international jurisdictions, the base can operate completely free from the constraints of international law. By erasing the local population, the U.S. built a staging ground for secret rendition flights and lethal drone strikes far from international oversight. The containment failures at Dugway and the human rights abuses on Diego Garcia reflect the inherent design of this clandestine architecture. But forward operating sites like Diego Garcia are strictly the muscle of this operation. To coordinate strikes and secret renditions across 80 different countries, the empire requires a highly advanced intelligence apparatus. It requires an all-seeing global surveillance network, a machine capable of connecting these remote outposts from space and directing lethal force anywhere on the planet. While the shadow footprint costs $55 billion a year, its lasting legacy is the steady erosion of the very transparency and accountability it was designed to bypass. The Pentagon describes its global presence as a matter of public record. But beneath that tradition of transparency, the military maintains a network of operations that bypasses the oversight of the American public. In 1975, Australian Prime Minister Gough Whitlam began questioning the purpose of a classified U.S.-Australian intelligence facility in the desert. He eventually threatened to close the site entirely. Within weeks, Whitlam was dismissed from office by the Governor General. In the years following, former intelligence officials alleged that the United States orchestrated the move to ensure their facility remained operational. The crisis surrounding Whitlam reveals the immense strategic value placed on these secret sites. When a host nation's politics threaten a core intelligence asset, maintaining that asset's survival can take precedence over diplomatic norms. That asset is the Joint Defense Facility Pine Gap. It is tucked away in the remote Australian outback, shielded by both geography and extreme secrecy. Pine Gap functions as the central nervous system for a network of spy satellites. From its position in the desert, it coordinates surveillance across thousands of miles of the Earth. The facility captures missile telemetry, radar signals, and cell phone traffic. These signals bounce from multiple continents to satellites, funneling data directly into Pine Gap for analysis. Analysts on site process this massive signals into actionable intelligence, including precise geolocation coordinates. This data is fed directly into the U.S. drone program. The coordinates processed in the Australian desert are used to guide lethal strikes on targets across the globe. Pine Gap is the link that turns passive surveillance into active kinetic warfare, often without the knowledge of the citizens in the countries where it operates. In Africa, the Pentagon maintains that its stugprint is minimal, claiming for years that Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti was the only official U.S. base on the continent. Public reports and leaked documents suggest a much larger presence, masked by the language used to describe military installations. The military utilizes a specific term for these sites: cooperative security locations, or lily pads. This classification allows these facilities to function as active hubs while avoiding the formal oversight required for permanent bases. By exploiting these definitions, the military has established over 60 of these unacknowledged outposts across the continent. These semantic distinctions allow for the expansion of a global network while keeping the true scale of the operation hidden from public scrutiny. This satellite image shows Niger Air Base 201. The military labeled this a temporary site to comply with deployment limits. Despite that label, the facility cost over $100 million to construct, featuring a massive runway and permanent infrastructure carved directly into the Sahara. Armed drones fly from this location daily, conducting persistent surveillance and launching strikes across the Sahel region. These concealed hubs enable the military to conduct prolonged operations in foreign territories with little awareness from the American public. American strategic priorities are shifting. While counterterrorism operations continue, the military is repositioning its resources to prepare for conflict between major global powers. Security concerns at traditional Gulf bases have led the military to move assets into unacknowledged underground bunkers and radar facilities in Israel. A massive geographic shift is occurring in the Pacific. The U.S. has secured access to 9 strategic locations in the Philippines to arm the first island chain. This expansion involves stockpiling heavy equipment and missile systems near the South China Sea. These forward locations are being equipped with mobile missile systems, such as the HIMARS, which can be rapidly deployed to counter regional threats. This shadow network is no longer just for surveillance. It is being reconfigured to provide the infrastructure necessary to contain rival superpowers. This hidden footprint now spans from the Australian desert to the African Sahel and the islands of the Pacific. While the military maintains that these 800 outposts preserve global stability, the expansion has come at the cost of displaced populations and billions in unmonitored spending. Because this apparatus operates in the shadows, it functions without the oversight or consent of the citizens who fund it. Building a global infrastructure for conflict in complete secrecy creates a landscape where a sudden escalation can lead to unseen consequences. By preparing for the next major war entirely in the shadows, the military risks committing the world to a path of escalation that the public may only recognize once it is too late.